Good day. Good day, everybody. All of you beautiful ascending humans out there. It's Wendy here with Raise the Vibe Initiative. And I have a very special guest and announcement today. I've got Mr. Sacha Stone on the show. I'm very excited to have this conversation with Sacha. I've been following his work for many years. For those of you who may not know Sacha, um, Sacha is a Rhodesian, Zimbabwe-born, war-experienced former rock star and artist. He's an outspoken advocate for human rights and natural justice, which has really attracted me to his work. Over the past decades, he has dedicated his life to setting up various initiatives like the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, with ongoing investigations into human trafficking, the Lazarus Initiative, reintroducing suppressed cultural, technological and historical insights through monthly symposiums, and his latest wildly successful bi-weekly redefined news broadcast, Arise. He also has a Guerrilla News, just to name a few. Just recently, he had broadcasted his widely shared first 5G apocalypse summit, and this was focusing on 5G technology and the remedies to protect ourselves from harmful 5G radiation. He's investigated peace initiatives, educational programs. He's lobbied against human rights abuses around the globe and prosecutes for the protection of vanguard innovators, scientists, and doctors. He is currently developing the New Earth Sanctuary alongside Magical Lake Bacalar in Mexico, which I'm so excited to talk with him about. I've been diving really deep into that. He's also working with highly ranked military people and inventors in Romania, working on pushing out zero-point technology and the source code for the New Earth blueprint. So, just an incredible human being in this history of time. Please, without further ado, let me welcome you all to Mr. Sacha Stone. Hey everyone, as I had previously mentioned, I've got Sacha Stone with me today on Raise the Vibe Initiative, and I am very excited to have him. He's got a body of work, and we're just going to dive right into it. Sacha, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate you and your work, and as I have said many times, sending you so much love and grace in your mission.
Well, thank you, Wendy. That's very kind of you. And there is no such thing as time, of course. So I'm perfectly situated in the geometry of now, as are you.
Yes, the illusion of time, something we must remember no longer exists. Sacha, I've been kind of following along, just getting updated because I know that you're consistently working on various projects, but there is a couple of things that I've noted and would really like to share with some of my viewers. As I had mentioned to you previously, and I've talked about this on some of my other shows, is that I've really felt that we've experienced almost a timeline shift, so to speak. I have really felt this sort of energy coming through almost, in the December, January month, where we just kind of hit this energy where before I felt that it was very dualistic and sort of, I don't know, argumentative. It's now almost like two very distinct different timelines. There's a higher timeline and a lower timeline, and they're in parallel with each other rather than like this. So anyway, this is my interpretation. What do you sort of feel like is happening with what's happening in the Ascension timeline, so to speak? And what are the mechanics of Ascension? Because I've heard you talk about this before, that we're dealing with right now.
Well, in the first instance, let me just say, using my own language, I personally step back from any notion of timelines for very good reason, because even to speak along the lines of timelines is for us to anchor our consciousness and our thoughts, now ideation, back in that old paradox and that old dualistic binarized game. So it helps when we actually stop even thinking or configuring thought in terms of timelines or time altogether. Meaning to say, my answer to the question is, position your consciousness in the indivisible line between what you call the negative timeline or the positive timeline, because the negative and positive polarity timelines are the problem. But when we position our state of witness or our throne of witness in the indivisible line and simply bring that net that we've cast ahead of ourselves into the Atman, into the relationship that I have with the Alpha Omega in the now, then I'm starting to bear witness to that which is truly, not that which is caught in the flux of the polarity, but that which is. So that leads me to the second part of your question, which is the mechanics of ascension are very much anchored in the capacity that you or I have in being in the now. Absolutely. And having our seat of witness anchored in this indivisible moment of now. And that then allows us to begin to settle into the meta state of our consciousness, our more quantum state of consciousness, where we become interconnected with the Alpha and the Omega, with all that is, all that ever was, all that ever shall be. And that is what we're all craving at the cellular level, at the mitochondrial level. We're seeking reunification with Source. And the point is that we can anchor the Alpha and the Omega in the temporal plane, in the 3D temporal plane, because the process of ascension is foundationally a biological process. It is not a spiritual process. We get confused into thinking that it is, that it's this abstruse, metaphysical, enigmatic, esoteric phenomenon. No, we must bring ascension back into the here and now, into the next word that comes out of my mouth, the next thought form that comes out of this mind's eye, the next footstep I take with my biological frame. That must be anchored in as the mechanics of ascension. Because if I conduct pure truth, I stand in pure truth, I conduct right action, I stand in right action, then I am participating in the so-called mechanics of ascension in the here and now. And that's the point. We need to be in our skin. It was the last thing I said at the Conscious Life Expo, which I was lecturing at a few days ago on the panel at the end of the Expo. I urged the audience, and there was a substantial audience of about 13,000 people at the Expo this year. I understand a lot of them very well intentioned and coming in as pioneers of the new frontiers of consciousness. And my singular message was, ascension is a biological process. Don't forget that.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. Thank you for that. Well, it does seem that you very much are at the forefront and a leader in where this is going. I know that you're working on really just being that. And one of the projects that you're working on that I find very interesting. I myself have been quite interested in sort of these geometric domes and these various other forms of ways to be living. And you have actually created and are sort of the architect of the New Earth Sanctuary. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is, when you started it, where it is in the process, and what people, or what can we expect to see with that project?
Well, most people who know my journey and work know that I started spouting and talking super publicly about 10 years ago. In 2012, I came out of the closet and began speaking at that time, at the end of 2012. So it's just over a decade that I've been speaking to the metric of what I call the New Earth Project, which has learned an awful lot over the last 10 years. Now, in the Bacala Laguna New Earth Sanctuary project, I finally grown the metric to the point where we are beginning to build and manifest that planetary template or blueprint in a very big and dynamic way. And that's an interface of the elevation of art and beauty and consciousness, as well as bringing in breakthrough innovative technologies, which I am very graced and blessed to be working with, connected mostly to my group in Romania, the Traciaunita group, where we created a protectorate for mostly military scientists and engineers who are kind of crawling out of the military industrial basement, so to speak, and wanting to purpose their genius and their algorithms and their innovations toward this vision of a new earth. So we've created that protectorate, and we finance them and bring their breakthrough technologies to market. That started now this year. It's very exciting. I've sneak peeked some of that, some of the technology innovations through the Lazarus Symposium to our members, which anyone can access through LazarusInitiative.com. And I've demonstrated and shown, as I did at the Expo a few days ago, some film footage and some photographic and CGI images of the breakthrough technologies. But this is really where consciousness and technology interface. So when I talk about a quantum technology, I'm not talking about wanting to move into an AI infused universe where we're driven by robots and governed by, invisible computation. But I'm talking about beautiful technologies which are mostly divinely inspired, some benevolent alien inspired or transcoded technologies. I'll be quite blunt about that. And we bring them to prototyping and then to the market, and we're launching them through the New Earth Sanctuary project in Mexico. So the Mexico New Earth Sanctuary Laguna project becomes important because it's the delivery platform for these healing technologies and free energy systems and bioremediation technologies. And the reason why I feel that the technology piece, the quantum technology piece, is important right now before we move into our full actualization of consciousness is because it's a stepping stone toward the realization of our full collective and individual enlightenment. So whereas ultimately a fully qualified, hyper-conscious human being who's enlightened should be able to activate Merkaba and travel through so-called time space at will, and can do, in point of fact, through lucid dreaming and astral projection. But most people can't do that because we're still bonded by all sorts of low frequency sets to this plane of existence, and the more of the material spectrum of action and interaction. But when we move into our heightened state of consciousness, for sure, we're able to telepathically communicate, activate our psionic intelligence, and begin to empathically receive transmissions and transmit transmissions to one another across any bridge of time space. That's where we're going. That's where certain benevolent angelic intelligences in our cosmos are already situated. And we are the hybrids of those galactic intelligences, the benevolent and the malevolent. The angelic seeded humans, that's you and I, are the battleground of the angelic and the demonic, and we've always been thus. But it would appear to me that we're beginning to win that battle, and that's why the New Earth, for instance, the New Earth Sanctuary Laguna project can now manifest where it couldn't 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 200 years ago. So as we depart from an arcane, blood cult-driven reality framework into this new quantum seeding, there are no rules. It's really about our bliss, and it's about our orgasm at the psycho-intellectual, psycho-spiritual, and psycho-emotional level. We need to, each of us, move into conjugation with that inner orgasmic field, which is the Kundalini rising, which of course is where all creativity issues from. Once we are conscious of that process, that we are in direct alignment with the Creator, as emissaries, as sons and daughters of God, what we think matters, what we dream matters, because it will manifest.
Well, I definitely feel that energy of co-creative communication is getting more apparent. And I definitely felt like the telepathy is really coming on board quite strong. I did get a download back in, I guess it was December time, where teleportation is, we're very close to these things, manifesting from what I can understand. So, and it's obviously people like you that are ensuring that these things are sort of, manifesting in our outer reality as they obviously live within us.
Well, they're re-manifesting. The point is that many of these technologies, anti-gravitation, levitational technologies, clairaudient capabilities, and kinetic capabilities have been known to the ancients in different wheels of our so-called civilization. And it's just that we have had a particularly wicked or Saturnian cycle that cut us off from source and cut us off from any memory or remembrance of our legacy, of our golden age, so to speak. That is why corrected history and ancient Tartaria and that whole subject matter is now becoming so important and so dynamic in the Gestalt. It's because it is embedded in the cellular memory of every single one of us. So we were, even up as recently as 100, 150 years ago, powering up communities with so-called free energy technology. The star forts are testament to that. I will be in Sudan within a couple of weeks of today, filming and doing some work with the emerging government there on disclosing and revealing to the world the truth about the Nubian pyramids, over 250 of them, some of them larger than the pyramids in Egypt. Why do we not know about this? There's many countries in the world that have been marginalized and had their historical and cultural record broken purposefully by the status quo, by the Midnight Masons who were governing the establishment, the Crown of England, the Crowns of Europe, the Vatican Complex, the Anglo-American Compact, the Dutch East India Company, the British East India Company, that all led to this kind of Fabianist globalist Sabbatean agenda that threw its cloak of doom across humankind as recently as 3 years ago with the COVIDiocy and this genetic interventionism, as satanic as it possibly gets, and yet it's all perfect. It's all happened in order to manifest by our collective will, the contrast against which we can now define the emergence of our angelic seeding, which is, as I pointed out, a re-emergence. So nothing new under the sun, according to the old Solomon's law, and as above, so below, interfolding, interweaving, self-revealing, self-fulfilling, self-manifesting reality framework. The question is, to the audience, to each of us, is who are you in this grand scheme? Who do you choose to be? How do you choose to be? To what extent do you wish or choose to embrace your supernature, your divine mantle, your Christed mantle? To what extent do you choose to be the greatest that you can be? And that, I think, is what the calling is right now for each of us, and it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yeah, it really is about learning how to be very different. And I've heard you talk about this before. I mean, we come in, we're born, the slate is wiped clean, and then it takes us some time to remember, and then we remember, and then all of the things we've been taught, we have to unteach ourselves.
Well,
So
let's speak about that momentarily, if you don't mind, Wendy, because it's so important that you touch on that. Yes, you say that the slate is wiped clean. That is absolutely true. So let's look at the mechanics of that. Who or what wipes the slate clean when we're born to this world? Well, culture wipes the slate clean, because in a previous lifetime you may have been some, child in sub-Saharan Africa running around with the Kalahari Bushmen, understanding how to read the sun, moon, and stars instinctually, knowing how to hunt and divine water through your senses, all sorts of advanced capabilities. You are now born in, 1973 into a Christian family, Baptist family in Midwest America. And what happens? This new culture that greets you as a newborn babe immediately mind fucks you into being a Baptist Midwestern Christian. And before you can even rekindle and remember your previous incarnations, much less your star seeding and the language and source that you've just come from, you immediately get taught the linguistic programming of English or German or French or Chinese or Russian. So the culture immediately that you're born into whitewashes out your memory banks. Your mother and father and grandparents and school teachers and pastors and imams and monks start to also reprogram you. So yes, we are absolutely born into this world incarnationally, generationally, and then we are reformatted in accordance with cultural memes, cultural mores and wiles. So that becomes the thing to look at. What is driving the culture that then imprints and programs hundreds of millions of souls? Well, it's the egregore, it's the elemental cloud intelligence, it's the demonic realms or the lower elemental realms that are accreted into the ethers, that come in to compose and orchestrate something called culture or society or community or even family. That is why, as a pure luminescent Christic quantum soul, each of us must start to deprogram the familial constructs. That's family, guys. The familial constructs are not your friend. Family is. The blood song is your friend. The ancestral song is your friend. But the familial construct is oftentimes your worst enemy. It's the way that your mother and father superimpose onto the child their broken dreams, their ambitions, and then steal away the bliss of that child resultantly. So that's a serious matter, because right there you've got cult programming through the family. You have cult programming through the local community, and then through the local culture, religion, society, and civilization. So we have all of these different levels of programming, which completely eradicate our star seeding and our celestial tongue, our true language. And that's the great shame and the great crime, in a sense, that we've been perpetrating against ourselves cyclically, because of course we then grow up as a good Midwestern Baptist or fundamentalist Islamist or Pacific Buddhist or whatever. We grow up to become that, and then we imprint the kids again. So you see, society, family, culture, religion, civilization are not our friend. In that sense, if we're very mindful of this, in my view, nobody should ever try to educate a child anything whatsoever for at least the first 7 years of that child's life. Speak Russian, speak Chinese, speak French, speak your language. The child will pick it up naturally. Speak as many languages as you possibly can. The child will pick up 9 languages if they're spoken around them, but don't try to teach them per se. That is not the thing to do. And certainly don't try and imprint on them things like geography and culture and mathematics and so on. That doesn't serve a child at all. Oftentimes, these kids, these so-called indigo kids, know so much more than we could ever impart to them, but we bleach it out of them before they can even express it.
I don't know what to say. I was quite particular, when I was raising my two, and that I did quite understand that a lot of our programming is sort of logged in those first 7 years of life. And then we tend to just continuously play them out, over the course of our lifetime, unless we're able to sort of become conscious of what those things are, or those limitations. But I definitely do agree. And that still does leave many of us in a place where, we are still faced with having to be human on this planet, and we're still sort of being faced with these systems. And I do believe that they are falling, and they're revealing themselves more and more. And it almost seems like it's just so apparent that I'm just waiting for it to just start to to fall. But we still do, many of us have children that we're trying to figure out, again, these new ways of how do we educate these children. What are the options moving forward in terms of again, all of these new ways of being and understanding and learning and growing. And on that, you are also involved with some educational programs that you're developing, or is it a New Earth University that you're involved with?
Well, I'm not involved with it. I founded it. Humanitad, my foundation, was involved in education programs 20 years ago, award-winning programs 20 years ago. So I'm no stranger to the metric of education programs. But now I founded the New Earth University a few years ago, and that's finding its feet. It's been a virtual online university, principally engaged, or most dynamically engaged in law and in truth form law, UCC and what have you. So we have very successful workshops and classes ongoing each semester in that field of focus, which is critical to understanding sovereignty, human sovereignty, and the fiction of government and church and so on and so forth. But it's also connected to the healing arts and things like animal whispering and, more enigmatic and esoteric subjects. So we have a great many fellows at the New Earth University. Most, if not all, are fairly iconic figures globally in their field. And we're very, very blessed to work amongst such brilliant people. Now, I am building a campus and a hard faculty in Mexico in the bosom of the New Earth Sanctuary Project, and very excited about doing that. Our chancellor, the Reverend Dr. Nancy Ash, was out there with me for a few weeks recently. We've started to scope out where we want to position it, and I hope to have spades in the ground this summer, and we'll manifest that campus and faculty quickly. But we're also planning this year a 0-point education for children, for younger kids. And that's because it's a great passion of mine, being a barefoot white African war child. I have a very unique story in education, in as much as I'm not really educated at all, and nor did I ever need to be educated. I was very blessed to have a very enlightened mother, and that was all I really needed. But the point being, I've grown up and I've seen and observed how fucked up the education of children is, and adults is, in the main. It's an absolute perversion and corruption of true learning and true inquiry. And that, for me, has been a source of great preponderance, to the extent that I felt a burning need to begin to define a new metric. And I am no brilliant scholar or researcher in anything, but I do know pure truth. And I do know that pure truth emerges through the actualized heart of a good human. And all a good human needs is a blank canvas upon which to paint their own vision, their own mission, and to begin their own journey in this world, journey of inquiry I'm talking about. So for me, teaching is a misnomer. It's a nonsense. And education is a perversion and a corruption, which should be almost entirely eradicated, even as a concept. What we should do is tell stories sit on the ground, preferably underneath the branches of great trees, or the canopy of the sky, whether it's clouds or starlight, I couldn't really give a damn. But certainly to be very connected to the paramagnetic and dielectric forces of the universe and of nature, position ourselves there. This body is a capacitor of the divine. I am the embodiment of all that is. I am a son of God. I fucking own it. Nothing will ever stand in the way of that being in the now. Now, because I know it, I have access to the superluminal. I have access to the Akashic, to the universal mind, to the library of the gods. It's in my DNA. My fractal DNA is communicating. And that's because I have positioned myself thus. So if we're to educate children, or if we're to give them the means by which they can inquire and thereby educate themselves, we simply need to create a blank canvas upon which they can so do, and create it in a place of natural beauty and harmony with the elements, and let them sit on the ground and tell stories to each other every single day. Let them speak about their dreams. Let them talk about their visions and their missions and their grave misgivings. Let them just talk. They'll remember who they are quickly. But if we are having them sat in little square rooms behind little wooden desks, burning their pineals under mercury-infused fluorescent light bulbs, and then we're programming them with bits of chalk on blackboard, or even worse, through the fractal incoherence of computer screens, well, we're not going to get very far in the reimagining of our species as the angelics. We're going to go to hell in a handbasket very soon, as indeed we have done since certainly 1952, when the planetary education curricula was infested and infiltrated, courtesy of the British principally. The Fabianist and Tavistock agenda infused the planetary zeitgeist through education, with broken history, broken geology and geography and archaeocosmology and astrology and astronomy, and all of the different disciplines have been systemically corrupted. So therefore, simply make way for the kids to become superluminal. They'll do it themselves very, very quickly. And then also set them to task with going and yanking on the tits of goats and cows and milking them, and riding, bareback on wild boar in the forest and the jungles if needs be. Let them go and stick insects in their mouth and get bitten by things, and let them interact with their telepathic and psionic capabilities. Each of us is Christed when we're young and we're protected. We don't need this overbearing, this disgusting Saturnian nanny state mentality, which has taken over our field of reality. We need to get out of the way of our children.
They come in very wise. I know mine certainly did. Just that I get to hang around with them. Yeah, no, I think that those are amazing concepts, and I really am with you, holding that vision that we'll be able to manifest that in this lifetime for the coming.
No, how about in this year and next year? We're starting now. We're not waiting. We're not waiting for anyone or anything with our project.
I love that. I know that you're boots on ground, so I'll help just to send and hold that vision for sure. It's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, so I guess sharing, I have been seeing that word and this way of communicating lately, where it is really becoming more fluid. There is a lot of sharing going on, code being exchanged. It's kind of exciting, to see that I think we are making.
Well, that's the morphogenetic flaming that's taking place. And yes, I would entirely agree with you. It's a very beautiful and very powerful phenomenon. And we are all blessed to be participating in this flaming, this morphogenetic upgrading and upshifting that's taking place. But it's visceral. It's happening at the atomic level, at the cellular and molecular level. Much less at the level of all biological systems and their meta consciousness, their plasma fields that emerge of the human family or the animal kingdom or the, or of the jungle canopies of this world, all of which are very much alive, dynamically alive and dynamically conscious. So that upshifting and upflaming of all living systems on the plane of the earth and within the earth are now conjugating and corresponding with the superluminal intelligence of the electric and dielectric universe. So it's a beautiful, beautiful space to be. Of course, it also means the kind of madness. It also means that we're all melting down, socioculturally, civilizationally, in every way, shape, and form, and biologically as well, with people falling victim to vaccine injury and this transmission of nanoparticulates that's happening all around the earth, which is an attempt, a satanic attempt to infiltrate the genetics of humankind. Is that happening? Absolutely, it's happening. Are we now opening ourselves up collectively to become demonically possessed by this lower elemental intelligences? Absolutely, we are. And it's going to be bouncing around and ricocheting off many of us. But it'll create the contrast against which those of us who are holding the flame of pure truth will be able to walk through the valley of death and fear no ill. And that's the beautiful language, alchemical language, that's emerging with this upshifting that you talk about, this morphogenetic upshifting.
Yes, and again, I guess I know you don't particularly use the timeline word, but I guess that's sort of what I'm talking about when I say that, is that there's been some genetic things that are going on. I guess that's part of the contrast of, as we're in our evolution, naturally there's going to be the other side of that, which would essentially be a de-evolution, or a dissension of some sort. And I guess as we're sort of moving through this and creating this new energy, we're going to have to sort of see both sides of the spectrum, right?
Or ignore both sides of the spectrum altogether, which is my recommendation. Again, just to underscore what I started off with, and situate your throne or seat of witness in the indivisible line between the left and the right, the good and the evil, the night and the day, the male and the female, and just bear witness, because this is the critical thing, is to conjugate or align one state of witness with the Godhead. And we can only do that when we're not participating directly on the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil, one way or the other.
It's drawing your energy for reaction.
Absolutely right. I mean, that's correct. Everything in this world, in this dystopian framework of reality, everything conspires to pull your attention into either the black or the white of the checkerboard. And, Democrat, Republic, whatever, that's the game that's playing out. It's part of a self-fulfilling, self-realizing binary logic and dualistic paradigm, which ultimately parasites off the fabric of our soul and sucks us dry until we drop off this planet with withered bodies. We don't want that anymore. None of us want to be subjected to war and disease and poverty and to bits of our body falling off. None of us want to engage the dance of death or mortality. And if we say we want to, we're lying. Anyone who pretends that it's a beautiful, glamorous passage when your teeth fall out, or when you can no longer get an erection, or when your hair's falling out and your face starts sagging. I mean, there is a certain poetic quality connected to aging gracefully. I mean, in a philosophical sense, I grant that. But if you were to be honest about it, would you prefer to be nubile, young, vital, filled with energy, and pink and luminescent like a 15-year-old or 17-year-old teenager that you once were? The answer would assuredly be yes, please. I rather liked feeling indomitable when I was young and having that incredible energy of youth and vitality. It's a beautiful thing. But again, it's what we choose to claim. So if we collectively choose to start to project our plasma, our thoughts, our ideation, our dreaming into the field will grant to us whatever it is we're asking for. That is universal law 101. It doesn't change. So if we want immortality and immanence and perfection, patterns of perfection, then we must simply lay claim to them. I mean, I certainly do the best that I can in my life. I chose to wage war against the so-called lords of time an awful long while ago. And I do defy them, mind, body, and soul. I'm not suggesting that I look like I'm 18 years old, but I'm suggesting that I absolutely defy the lords of time. I defy the tick-tock of 1260 clocks and wristwatches. I don't pay any attention to time. I don't look at it. I don't think about it. I don't celebrate anniversaries. I'm appalled by birthday anniversaries and marriage anniversaries, and all of that stuff appalls me to the bone, because I understand the cult programming that it entails, and how that 1260 tick-tock time signature is the Saturnian logic, is the Roman Catholic Church, is the perversion of government and the high street and the parent corporation, monetizing and securitizing living souls into fictions. It's all connected to time and the myth of time, but we are the ones who perpetrate that myth.
So if we are now conscious and we're consciously co-creating, and there's many of us, I think, that are getting to that point, how does that affect the global consciousness?
So you'll have to forgive me for coming in and culling another sacred cow. But again, I can only speak honestly my own language. I personally despise the term co-creating, and I'll tell you why, Wendy. Because it's become part of the parlance of the modern consciousness era, which I appreciate. And of course, I understand what's being said. Of course, I understand what's being inferred or meant by it. But consider, there is only creation, no such thing as co-creation. Co-creation is to split creation into two. Why would we do that? We're playing into a kind of inverse logic, which itself is satanic or luciferic, in as much as it's false light worship of false ideas. So I'm an absolutist. I'm a puritanical absolutist. It's in my blood and in my bones. And so it starts with linguistics and words and source codes. So I just invite the audience, I invite myself, I invite you, I invite all of us to look at, when we say co-create, why are we saying that? It's a way of us saying that we're finding the divine within ourselves, and we're beginning to stand up and acknowledge and exceed the fact that we can create, and that we want to create, and that we should create. And that's a beautiful thing. But then just call it creation, not co-creation. I'm worried about the language, how it feeds back on us. But of course, I understand what you mean. Where we take that moving forward is a matter for each of us. But I can tell you this. What I do know is that and I'm not trying to sound sentimental in a spiritualized way here, but I mean it, because I've arrived at this point. I genuinely believe that every single soul on the face of the earth matters. I genuinely believe that every single soul plays an integral, axiomatic role in the collective and in the evolution of humankind and in the mechanics of ascension, claiming the frontiers of this next great age that we're about to enter. There is not a single soul on earth that you could point to me, whether it's Anthony Fauci, son of a bitch, or it's the local perverted schoolmaster who flashes at little kids in the bushes, and God knows there's enough of them about, or if it's the bum on the street in downtown, Toronto, or the guy in Calcutta who's literally taking a dump in the middle of the street, which they do all the time. If you've been to India, you'll know that. So there's all sorts of weird human beings that make up the orchestra of humankind. And a great many of them are very, very unattractive characters and are not doing things that appear to make much sense. But again, every single event, every circumstance, and every relationship that happens on earth is for appointed and an anointed reason. And there is always an observer, a witness to that event, to that circumstance, or to that relationship, who learns a soul lesson, a soul-stirring lesson from being the witness to that. And then that's how great novelists end up writing amazing novels. That's how great rocket scientists end up building extraordinary machines. That's how artists, painters, poets, dancers end up conjuring the elemental spirits into the mind's eye and taking flight and painting on the canvas of life with words and with paintbrushes. And it's all connected to the experiences that we've witnessed and the relationships that we've had, those that are good and those that are not so good. So when one sees that every single event, circumstance, relationship on earth in the history of this world is a perfectly anointed and appointed event or circumstance or relationship, it's a fractal of the whole through which the whole emerges, that becomes very powerful. It also explains perfectly why, and I've used this analogy in many of my talks, so some of my audience will be yawning roundabout now, but I've explained that this is how old hook-nosed grandmothers in Bulgaria and Romania can read tea leaves and can read the future in tea leaves, or how an oracle can look into a crystal ball and see the future, because every single pinpoint in the here and now is connected to the whole, provided the seat of witness, which is the hook-nosed grandmother in this case, is able to suspend her own judgment and simply bear witness to that which exists, self-exists, self-reveals, self-fulfills.
Oh, I'm going to have to let that one sink in. That's a lot of information. And it's great information. I particularly am holding a vision of something beautifully emerging. I don't like seeing these non-benevolent beings on the planet that may be hurting other human beings or doing these monstrous things to children and all those kinds of things. And so I do have a difficult time trying to figure out how that fits in to a certain degree.
Should we look at that?
Okay.
All right. Sure. So then let's look at it. Let's take a subject. Right. Let's take ritual satanic abuse. Is that too hard for your audience? It shouldn't be.
I mean, it is something that goes on. I think many of my audience are aware of.
Okay. So then take a look at it. And then once you really drill down into the event horizon that occurs with the sacrifice of innocence, you have to really withdraw your psycho-emotional response in observing this, in bearing witness to it. There is a soul covenant at play here. Obviously, the satanic priest is the evil one. Obviously, the baby on the slab about to be subjected to some Canaanite ritual, obviously that is the innocent. So you've got the good and you've got the evil right there, but you also have a soul covenant between the two. Who is the one in control in that event horizon? Well, most people in a psycho-emotional rage or reaction will be saying, well, it's the evil priest holding the dagger over the baby. No, absolutely not so. If you flip that 180 degrees and recognize at the soul covenant level, it is the angelic babe at the soul level who is incarnated in order to have their blood drunk by a Babylonian priest in order to turn that priest toward the light. There is fractal coding inside the blood. It's a very scary subject. And I'm not suggesting that any part of it is acceptable, but I'm saying that there is a covenant involved. And our consciousness plays an integral part in this. I have spent many, many years fighting against human trafficking, fighting against ritual satanic abuse. I set up the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, not for fun. It almost bankrupted me. I set it up because I care about babies being sacrificed in the basement and human beings on battlefields like in Bosnia or in Ukraine. being blitzkrieged and bombed to death, or in the Yemen or in Sudan, where I'm going shortly. I care about war. I grew up in a war. It's all sacrificial harvest. It's all Canaanite ritualism, So all of it needs to end. But I do know that the only way I found the courage to look at these subjects and to understand them was once I suspended my judgment, suspended my psychological and emotional, repulsion to them and revulsion, and started just to bear witness and acknowledge the fact that there were higher powers, higher forces, and higher contracts and covenants at play. And once you get that, you can actually then move into the inquiry and into the investigations and into the research, because you're not having constant, cold night sweats and night fevers, which happened to me for some years when I was getting close to this stuff. And when I was meeting with Satanists and interviewing them and hearing the testimony from them in tribunals and special hearings with the International Tribunal, when I was interviewing and counseling countless people who had been subjected to ritual satanic abuse and pedophilia and had witnessed horrors that you could not even imagine in the most horrendous science fiction horror film. So all those things are real. They need consciousness to shed light on them. They need you and I and the audience, good people of the world, to have the courage to place our consciousness, our attention on them. That's what casts light onto these shadowy climes and brings them toward the light. So that is why I think it's very important that we understand that there are hyperdimensional elements to reality, and that everything, again, even the most ugly scenarios, have a divinely anointed and appointed reason. Because, and it's well known that it is suffrage and suffering that diminishes the human ego. It's the only thing, in fact, that kills the ego. So ego can become a force for wickedness in this world, which it does through usury and exploitation and manipulation and banking and profiteering and warmongering and all of that stuff that goes on. And just the mundane abuses that happen in every office and every household with bullying, and victimizing more vulnerable members of the family or the community. So that's going on in, billions of times a day in transactions between humans. What is it that ends up killing the ego that's causing all the harm? It's the suffrage. So the karmic blowback on the individual, the perpetrator, when they end up being crushed under the wheel of suffrage, which happens to all of us, that's when the ego goes into abeyance, and that's when the suffering ends up releasing the humanity in those individuals. So one has to really begin to see the full tapestry of human engagement and to understand it by not condemning it outright. Obviously, you fight against evil. You need to keep doing that any which way. We have an instinct to do that. You have the instinct. You're the mama bear in this case. I'm the papa bear in this case. We have a burning instinct to right the wrongs of this world. I'm just suggesting that if we're serious about righting the wrongs of this world, first we have to fully understand them.
I agree. I mean, we do have to acknowledge, however, paying it attention. That may be something I don't particularly care to do anymore, although I have, dove into it previously. Thank you for sharing that, Sacha. All right. So next thing, I think we already talked about, or did we talk about, you've got something, I think, at the Consciousness Expo that you were discussing some of these new technologies for 5G.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, again, I'm quite unapologetically, I've been promoting and developing, financing and designing, and I'm very involved myself in a number of different technologies. And principally, there are two things. One is technologies that deploy frequencies that heal the human body, and not just the human body, but all biological systems. So these are the so-called Tesla frequencies. And I have a great understanding of those technologies. I'm working with a number of military scientists and mathematicians and engineers, emphasis in Romania with our group there in developing those and bringing them to the market, which we'll be releasing through the New Earth Sanctuary Laguna project in Mexico, where the first hard faculty and I guess healing clinic will be built there. And we're scoping that out right now, and we're very excited. What we do know is that we can essentially reverse every syndrome, every condition. We understand what entropy is at the cellular and atomic level, and how you reverse it, and how you create or allow for the counterpoint frequencies to come in. So therefore, in remediation and healing, the two things that matter are, one, shielding from the outside the body from interference, from electromagnetic frequency intervention, and on the other hand, from healing from the inside, which is ingesting or imbibing key solutions or microbial formulas that can activate in the microbiome and create the protections from the inside. So I'm working with Maria Chrysler and another leading laboratory, one of the leading laboratories in the world in Europe, which I'm not allowed to disclose at the moment, but there are two laboratories in this instance that have come together through my bidding over the last year or so, over a year now, to create a particular formula. I've studied multiple formulas. I've been involved in it since 2017, studying, researching, and even financing and getting beaten black and blue in the biotech world. And I've met with a great many of the leading scientists in that world. And I've made a number of films that are out there for people to see. But I can tell you that the formula that has now been put together, I'm desperately excited about. It's being blended. It's coming out late February, late this month into start March. And that's called New Earth ReGenesis Formula, the Mechanics of Ascension. I put that all on the bottle because that's exactly what it is. I have less than zero tolerance for naysayers, and I'll beat with a stick anyone who wants to come and argue biotech with me in a public forum. I'd be very, very happy to do it. We've been focusing on a very unique aspect of age reversal and of immune boosting, which is critical at this time, especially when the entire biosphere has been weaponized. So we need to boost the human immune system massively by many hundreds of % instantly through lipid transfer technology and all sorts of other wonderful magic that happens. We have to protect ourselves also from the outside with electromagnetic frequency shielding. So that's also technology that I've been very involved in and am very involved in. And the Biomedes Trinity device is the one that I'm pushing out the most right now. This is Eastern European / Russian tech that has emerged from the military basement over the years. And again, I've been tracking this stuff for a long time and understanding the clinical studies and the clinical trials and the human trials that are behind them, understanding the genesis point of these technologies, how, when, where, and why they were developed and heavily financed by the space programs in various countries, how it is that a number of the engineers and scientists have broken away their algorithms and technology to bring them into the market because the parent corporation isn't going to release them anytime soon. But outfits like my own are not waiting or knocking on the door asking for permission of the Satanic, AMA, FDA, and WHO, and all these other grisly multilateral organizations who seem to have one goal in common, and that is global depopulation.
Absolutely. Well, and just one other quick thing, maybe. Have you been working on anything regarding food supply and regeneration of soil and these sorts of things?
Yeah, and yes, Wendy, and it's very connected to what I'm talking about. So I work very closely and with Dr. Christina Rahm and Clayton Thomas, her partner with the Root Brands, and the Root Brands is the best in class today in remediating the human biome, and that I'm aware of, in collating the blood and of qualifying the blood against this mass invasion of satanic technology interference with graphene oxides and all the poisons raining down on us, and turning us, weaponizing the human biological system. So that the root brands is something which I've been involved with and been promoting wildly for the last year with inordinate successes. So the amount of science behind that is phenomenal. But then you just need to look at the credentials of Dr. Christina Rahm, who was a former chief medical officer and advisor for most of the big, biotech and pharmaceutical giants, until she completely swung into another saddle, realizing what the global pharmaceutical industry was doing, and decided to purpose her triple PhD genius towards solving all the problems that she could see big pharma was setting humanity up for. And that's what the root brands is. It's the full spectrum remediation against that intervention. And anyone wanting to check that out, I earnestly urge you to go to therootbrands.com/5D and check it out. Have a look at the clinical science there, and check out Dr. Christina Rahm, the incredible track record of this woman, and then get yourself and your family and your friends onto her formula pronto. I urgently recommend that to people.
Yes, I will be leaving all your links in all of the places we're going to post this, but I don't think I have that one. I will get it from you to make sure that we've got that down there. Wow, well, that's a lot of information, and I feel very blessed to have had this time with you, Sacha. I appreciate you so much. I'm always keeping an eye and seeing all the innovation and the amazing things you're doing in the world. I'd also, be very interested in talking maybe a little bit more about the New Earth Sanctuary at some point. Yeah.
Very happy to do that. I mean, I've got limitless amounts of energy, and I'm only passionate about imparting what I know and what I see and what I experience. I'm interested in imparting what I can to folks, to people who are genuinely interested in affirming and creating this new earth. It's why I was born to this world. It's certainly why you were born to this world. It's almost certainly why all of those eyeballs of your audience looking in were born to this world. We are of that same resonant frequency. It's what brings us together in this conversation. We let the dark hats and the bad actors and the subhumans can all gather in Davos and have their own little sessions wherever they're meeting in the world to build bombs and to architect chaos in the world. Let them get on with it. They carry our blessings. We certainly don't approve, but they carry our blessings nonetheless. But we need to just get on with being in the now and architecting this new earth. And I thank you for showing such a keen intelligence and interest in the biological side of things, because redeeming ourselves from the satanic thrall of doom and of death and destructivity is really important. Again, that's why I'm promoting these formulas and these technologies so vehemently. It's not my game. I don't promote things. I never wanted to. I never did. But I do now. And I said at the beginning of COVID, when I understood what was taking place. And remember, I was the man who called for and hosted and financed the health summit in Bali in 2019, the World Health Sovereignty Summit, calling out what was about to happen. I had Del Bigtree, G. Edward Griffin, Jim Humble, some of the greatest pioneers in health sovereignty in the world who were there gathered at my home in Bali at the Akasha New Earth Haven. And we staged a 3-day World Health Sovereignty Summit, followed by an international tribunal, which was the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Weaponization of the Biosphere. Again, with Dell, Dr. Robert Young, 24 of the world's leading figures. Anyone can go to commission.itnj.org and see what we were warning the world about 6 months before the Wuhan outbreak. Weaponization of the biosphere was coming down the pike. We could see it. And of course, it happened. And it became the most important, in a sense, axiomatic shift point in the history of our world, because it has manifested the definition between life and death, between this black and white of the checkerboard for each of us to see. So redeeming our own cells and our DNA and our genetics from the satanic intervention is the only thing that matters right now. And these formulas and these technologies are the means by which we can do that and walk through the shadow of the valley of death. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sacha. So much love and grace to you.
All right. God bless you, girl.
Take care. Bye.